Most people like to be around other people. Maybe it has to do with wanting to be part of a tribe, being part of a community, or maybe it's conditioning. But it seems that human beings have a need for connection, and so disconnection can cause pain, especially when it feels as if the disconnection is thrust upon you, as it has been during these crazily unsettled times. I mean, never before have we been told not to hug our family or our friends, not to meet up, or even see the people we care about unless it's on a screen. And we're told that this disconnection is leading to an increase in mental health issues and suicidal ideation. Now, I talk about the need for connection and the repercussions of disconnection in my course Breaking Free from Addiction. In the 1970s, Professor Bruce K. Alexander, a psychologist at the Simon Fraser University in British Columbia, highlighted the importance of being part of a healthy community and how disconnection is an element of addiction, and he demonstrated this in his rat park experiment. Dr. Alexander was an experimental psychologist at a time when it was common to use white lab rats for research. The rats lived in solitary confinement cell blocks, isolated, unable to see or touch each other. And they were the lucky ones. What was even worse was that there was a solitary confinement block where the rats were put into boxes and endured either 24-hour starvation, or they could get tiny pellets of food one at a time if they pushed a little lever on the side of the box over and over again. Experimental psychologists at the time thought these boxes, Skinner boxes as they were known, well, they thought this was a good place to study addiction. They perfected a way to allow the rats to inject small doses of a drug into themselves by pressing a lever. And the drugs reached the rats' brains moments after self-administration. The researchers watched as the rats pressed the lever again and again, frequently enough to consume large amounts of morphine, heroin, cocaine, and many other drugs. And many of the rats preferred the drug injections to food and water, and they continued pressing the drug lever until they eventually died. Now, this study appeared to corroborate the theory that drugs are extremely addictive, and the media went wild over the research. But you know, Professor Alexander had his doubts about these results. He knew that in normal circumstances, rats are highly social, sexual creatures. And just like humans, solitary confinement can drive them crazy. You know, rats, like humans, would prefer to take mind-numbing substances rather than be mind-numbingly bored, emotionally isolated and powerless. So in 1977, Professor Alexander gathered a team together of Simon Fraser University researchers to repeat the study, but with one big difference. In one part of the room, they built the standard wire cages that would alienate the rats and stop them from interacting. And then in another part of the room, Alexander and his colleagues built a big plywood box, and they filled it with things that rats like, you know, climbing platforms, tin cans to hide in, wood chips for playing in, and running wheels for exercise. Rats of both sexes were put into the box, and, well, no surprise, but soon the enclosure was filled with adult rats and lots of baby rats too. They called the enclosure Rat Park, and the team ran several experiments comparing the drug consumption of rats in Rat Park with the rats in solitary confinement. And, well, you know, it was no big surprise that the isolated rats consumed more of the drug solution in every experiment. For the rats in the park, morphine had no attraction, even when it was dissolved in sticky sweet liquid. The social rats in the park would even go through withdrawal rather than consume the morphine. So, in a natural surrounding, a rat will stay away from the drug if it's given a choice. In contrast, the isolated, caged, alienated rats consumed up to 20 times more morphine. And I talk about this experiment because it seems that people are suffering in the same way during this enforced lockdown and the social isolation that's happening around the world now in 2020. You know, reports are appearing daily detailing how people are turning to alcohol more than ever, and how there's a rise in people consistently drinking earlier in the day. Now, you know, these are people that would normally be at work and having a normal social life, and now they're tending to drink more. And I mean, of course, this could also be down to the fact that many people have been working from home, and so their routines have been disrupted, and that can lead to a weekend feeling when it might feel more acceptable to drink during the day. So, whilst we're encouraged to socially isolate, how can we combat the feeling of disconnection? There are so many people who can't visit relatives, and of course it is especially difficult if the relatives are in care homes or hospital. But conversely, there are also reports of people seeing more of their family because they're taking the time to talk on a screen. Now, of course, this may not have the same satisfaction as physically touching and hugging someone or seeing someone in person, but it can provide a sense of connection to the people we care about. We can still keep up with what's happening in somebody's life and stay in the conversation. And have you ever leaned back against a tree or stood with your feet in the sea or a river and felt truly connected to nature? You know, a feeling of just being at one with everything around you. Well, that points to seeing that we can't ever really be disconnected. I'm really not downplaying anyone's upset at not being able to visit loved ones, but rather I'm talking about keeping in a feeling of connection. You see, the feeling of disconnection comes from our thoughts about being disconnected. We start to focus on loss and lack rather than love and connection. But it is possible to maintain a connection with others even through a screen. In mid-March, Breanne Brown conducted a church service from her own home office. Brown had recently, in the years previously, started attending Episcopalian church services, and she says that she took comfort from the connection with others. She tells her followers that social distancing doesn't have to mean social disconnection. And she said this to her followers when she announced her plans to hold a 15-minute church service. "I haven't been to church in almost 20 years, read one comment after the service. I cried the entire 15 minutes. Now, Brown couldn't see who was watching, and the watchers couldn't see each other, but the feedback was a massive sense of connection. In 1912, the French sociologist Émile Durkheim introduced the term collective effervescence after investigating what he originally described as a type of magic that he witnessed during religious ceremonies. Durkheim explained that a collective effervescence is an experience of connection, communal emotion, and he called it a sense of sacredness that happens when we're part of something that's bigger than us. Durkheim also proposed that during these experiences of collective effervescence, the focus shifts from self to group, and it's been found that you don't have to be part of the collective in person to experience this. And this is why you might be moved by a concert that you watch on screen, or how your emotions are heightened if you watch a choir singing their hearts out, or you see a group celebrating. You feel part of the experience. And this is why I really encourage anyone who's going through feelings of disconnection or loneliness to connect with other people in whichever way they can, to laugh and love in the only way that's available at this moment. Because true connection, the love and the energy that flows between us and every other human in the world, well, that isn't something that can be broken.